Hey guys, and welcome to day 6 of my countdown to the Walking Dead premiere. Today I am going to be doing my season 5 spotlight. So, I felt like throughout all of season 5 that there was a very specific theme running through the entire season. In previous seasons, we've dealt with the evil people of the world, if you will, being really dangerous. I think season 3 dealt with that a lot. Season 4, we dealt with what happens when people in your own group get dangerous. And in season 5, I think they heavily focused on what happens when you meet people who are cowards. And are they more dangerous than really not so good people that you've encountered because they're driven by fear? It's kind of easy to look at things black and white for a while in this show. You know, if you're good, you're good. If you're bad, you're bad. The lines have been getting blurred in previous seasons, but now we've gotten to a really important question. What if somebody has good intentions? They are a good person. You know, they haven't really, deliberately, killed anyone or hurt anyone, but they're getting other people killed because of their cowardice. And I think that that's a really, really important theme throughout this whole season. So I'm just gonna get into different examples of that. So first we start off with Terminus, who I don't entirely think are particularly cowards. I think that they might be, but I do think they're driven by fear, if that makes sense. They had some tough things happen to them. They had these guys come in and rape their women and do these horrible things to them. So ever since then on, once they kind of regained control of Terminus, which we really didn't see how that happened, it, never again was kind of their slogan. And, so for fear of outsiders at this point, they're just going to kill you and eat you. I guess in some instances they give you a choice, but I don't know. That's kind of, the logic here is a little skewed. And of course that's kind of a mirror image to Rick at this point. And, a lot of people are very concerned for Rick in this season in particular of how far he's going to protect those he's loved. I think at this point, Rick's state of mind is, I'll kill you first, ask questions later. As long as my people are safe, I don't really care. And I can't really blame him for having that sort of mentality after everything that they went through, especially Terminus. So the next example I want to talk about when it comes to kind of cowards of the season is Father Gabriel. Obviously he's kind of the really strong example of all of this happening. He is, he's been living solely out of from the fact that he didn't help people. He didn't have any sort of courage or bravery to help people in that were, knocking on the door of the church. And he just literally locked the doors and hid, and just sheer cowardice. And even, it's kind of funny how a sense of being comfortable can make people feel, by the way, if you hear that they're shooting artillery, I fucking cannot find a time to shoot these videos when, my neighbors upstairs aren't running around and you can hear all of that, or they're shooting artillery, or there's a thunderstorm. So if you hear it, I'm sorry. I can't wait to move. Okay, back to Father Gabriel. I think it's kind of interesting to see once he gets comfortable how quickly he turns on Rick and his group. Rick and his group got him to Alexandria, got him to safety, but then he completely just said, you know, they're bad. And to try to get into Father Gabriel's mind a little bit when all of that occurred, Father Gabriel, because he was so shut in and he just sat there and was so afraid to even leave the church, I think it probably is a little shocking for him to see some of the things that Rick's group had to do in order to survive. That doesn't excuse anything, but I think that that's where that came from. You know, he didn't entirely understand the world because of what he's been through. And so that kind of led him to be a little scared of Rick's group. Obviously, kind of the big example for cowards, it probably comes to mind, is Eugene and his kind of truth came out in this season. Now, I wasn't entirely shocked by that moment, but I thought it was a really, really good, well done episode showing Abraham's backstory and why Abraham signed on. And what I loved about this kind of whole thing was that Eugene really, he survived the way that he knew how to. And I mean, people can fault him for that. He probably got people killed, but he survived. But, you know, I think that moment where he tells the truth, I think it was the first time he didn't feel safe anymore. You know, he always felt safe with Abraham and Rosita next to him, and then eventually like Glenn and Maggie and Tara. And it's kind of interesting to see, you know, when Abraham's like, no, we're going to push through this big walker horde. I don't know how that would have gone well. That was when Eugene said, you know, which is still, in a sense, a bit of a cowardly thing. Okay, he kind of, you know, Eugene is smart, and he said, okay, this isn't benefiting me anymore. I'm going to tell the truth. Though that wasn't he probably shouldn't have said, I'm smarter than you to Abraham. That led him to get knocked the fuck out. But, you know, we'll breeze past that for a second. What I love about Eugene's character is he's actually kind of the coward of this season that seems to maybe not make a full transformation, but take strides into helping people. This scene with Tara is amazing. I fucking love that scene where he carries her out. And though I don't know if he would sacrifice his life for everybody in the group, I think he is starting to see that there are people in the group that he genuinely cares about. And Tara is one of them. Another plot line that a lot of people probably weren't all that happy about, didn't really pay off well, was the hospital storyline, but I'm going to talk about how it all really does relate to the whole theme of this season. I loved the concept of the hospital. I don't think it was executed in the best way. I have my own opinions about that. However, what I think is really cool about the hospital is, one, that they had Beth there. Beth, to a lot of viewers, probably even still to this day, is kind of one of the weakest characters in their minds. And to put her in this place with people who wear cop uniforms, I mean, they are cops, but why I'm saying that is, you know, when you look at somebody wearing a cop uniform or to any type of uniform like that, you think, oh, they're courageous, they're brave. That's kind of the thing that comes to mind. But it really was kind of a bunch of people who were maybe, particularly Dawn, not that courageous and not that strong. And you're kind of seeing these two characters between Dawn and Beth, the difference between the two. Where Beth, by the end of the hospital storyline, found her strength, and Dawn, you know, is kind of we figure out that she's kind of a weak person parading as a strong person. You know, she's not going out into the world. She's keeping everybody confined. She's trying to have this delusional, I don't even know what it is, to convince people that they owe her for kidnapping them. Like, the bitch was crazy. But it was really, I think the whole concept of it was really interesting and a great showing of, you know, cowards can come in all sorts of forms. And I think it's really interesting to see the whole storyline and see two characters within Beth and Noah that are, you know, seemingly weak, but they have found their strength in this horrible place. Another thing is that they took Carol, and Carol really didn't get to see her full potential. I will admit, I was kind of hoping that Carol and Beth were going to team up and like light the fuckers on fire, but Carol was kind of, you know, knocked unconscious and she had some issues. But Carol is the epitome of, you know, a character that in the beginning of the show seemed very weak, but she got her strength later on. And so it was very interesting to see the characters that they chose to be kind of intertwined with that storyline. The whole season, it's riddled with little bits of, you know, especially in Alexandria, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but even before that, of people who are not really facing their fears. They're finding what is more comfortable for them in this world, and trying to stick to that and cling to it. And you can kind of see a lot of people in Rick's group overcome a lot of fears, and it's an interesting kind of notion that that I believe the show was trying to portray. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is Tyrese, who in my mind is not a coward by any means. But what I will say about Tyrese is he wasn't cut out for this world. And it was a good thing that he wasn't cut out for this world. The episode where Tyrese dies I loved it. I think it's one of my favorite episodes of season 5. To me, the episode showed that being a crazy killer, like maybe Carol or Rick or a lot of people, you know, Tyrese watching Sasha kill that termite in the church so very intently was a really strong scene to watch. I think, you know, being a killer in this world is how you survive. But if you don't want to be a killer, it's okay to let go. And I loved that they talked about that and brought that to the forefront. I liked that he was visited by, you know, ghosts of his past, in bad forms, bad memories, and good memories, and good angels on his shoulder and bad angels on his shoulder. Well, I guess the governor was like the bad angel, and Martin, but it was really interesting to see him kind of have this struggle and say, you know, and there was even a moment where he's like, no, I'm going to be strong, I'm going to beat this. But then there was that time of letting go. Now, the whole point of The Walking Dead is, what will you become when things get bad? When do you give up? When should you give up? You know, there are certain people who maintained their innocence when they died. I think, you know, Dale's a very good example of that. You know, the world never corrupted him. And I think Tyrese being so face to face with the prison battle and Herschel dying, and he was right there when Beth died. And of course, I mean, the epitome of it all, Lizzie and Micah. he was coming face to face with all of these horrible things, and he didn't have the stomach for it. But believe me when I say I don't mean that as like a bad thing. I think that it was kind of a good thing that they showed a character who really didn't want to change, and he didn't want to become this crazy killer, and he let go. I wish that the actual act of how he died was a little more epic, but I really loved the episode that surrounded his death and what they were trying to portray with it. So obviously, you know, the characters really hit a big low. What I loved seeing in the episode then, I believe, where they really are the lowest of the low, they didn't really turn on each other. Sasha was having some issues, understandably so, but everyone really didn't turn on each other. They weren't going to go after each other in some sort of horrible way to make their lives easier. And you kind of, even though they were at the lowest point that this group has ever been at, after Beth died and after Tyrese died, and they have no food, no water, they had to eat dogs, you know, they all were still a unit, and they were all never going to turn on each other. And it's just this core group, and I think they needed that heading into Alexandria. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Alexandria. So Alexandria is a really interesting concept. How the fuck they've survived this long? Yes, they have walls, but without anybody coming and trying to murder all of them is insane to me. I think the whole show is really interesting, but I felt it was a weirdly uncomfortable couple of episodes when we first got to Alexandria, and they're having parties and they are baking casseroles, and it is just very uncomfortable to see the characters that we saw just like fight for every ounce of food come into this place, and it's really kind of strange. But it's also interesting to see how the Alexandrians are really you know, having some issues with the reality of the world. Obviously, there were big examples of cowards of Alexandria, Aiden and Nicholas, and that they left people to die, and the episode where Noah dies is just puts it all into the forefront of, you know, this is what we're dealing with this season. And I, throughout the entirety of episode 15, how it ended with Rick's kind of speech of the blood coming down and waving the gun around and all that stuff, I was so team Rick, I couldn't even tell you. I knew a lot of my friends and other people that I knew that watched the show that were like, Rick is just crazy, like, I don't like him, whatever. Ugh. I absolutely agree with Rick. He did not have the best presentation, let's be real, in that moment. But he had a fucking point, and we're getting, you know, once Noah died, even though Noah hadn't been part of Rick's group that long, you know, like Beth kind of vouched for him before she died, so, you know, he's part of the group. And once he died, because of an Alexandrian's cowardice or mistakes, okay, that's it. You know, now we need to step in and things need to, and this is where that morality issue comes in. You know, the people of Alexandria didn't technically do anything wrong, really, but they're not equipped for this world, so what do? And that's kind of the interesting situation to kind of look at within this whole season. And, you know, even the final moment where Rick shoots Pete, and Morgan sees him, and it's kind of this like moment, oh God, you know, we're kind of seeing how they can like thread the line of, you know, what is necessarily needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, and so on and so forth. And it's an interesting question to pose about this season and what needs to happen. Is Rick the leader that they need? Season 6 explores that even more, but I think, you know, I was Team Rick through the whole thing, but I understand when people were a little taken aback by how he was kind of handling the situations in the last 2 episodes. But for me, I just think he's the best equipped to lead everybody. So, yeah. So now I'm going to talk about the MVP, my favorite episode, and the most defining moment of the season. So the MVP of season 5, I'm picking Rick again. All right, guys, listen. He won me over again. Where it kind of is the season for a lot of people where he turned some people off, but for me, he won me over again. I think this season really, though all of the seasons deal with Rick, but this season really kind of showed him in a state of really caring so much about the people in his life. He really wasn't going to take anybody's shit. He really wasn't going to deal with Alexandrians costing the lives of people that he loved. I loved the speech at the end of episode 15. I loved a lot of moments that Rick had. I loved his sort of transformation into a badass, and I think what's really great about Rick in season 5 is that he has those people around him like Glenn and Michonne that are really kind of telling him to not go too far over the edge. He surrounded himself with such great people that to me, it has the ability to be such a great leader of a bigger group like Alexandria, with the help of his kind of lieutenants, if you will. The best episode, or my favorite episode of the season, is No Sanctuary. I think the premiere just, you know, blew it out of the water. I mean, really, it had action moments, it had sentimental moments, it had moments where, you know, we were seeing the termites get it, and it was after a long wait, long kind of cliffhangery wait, where we finally got to see what is going to happen, who these guys were. I was pretty sure they were cannibals, but it was good to get that confirmation, and I thought the whole episode was really well done in a lot of ways. I don't think I could pick another episode that's one of the episodes I go back and I watch over and over again. It's got amazing action. It's got some wonderful moments within Terminus, and then some great moments where everybody, sans Beth, is reunited at the end of the episode, and Rick sees Judith, and Tyrese sees Sasha, and Daryl sees Carol, and it's amazing. Now I'm going to talk about the most defining moment of the season. Okay. So, the most defining moment for me, which I did not enjoy watching, thank God I didn't do reaction videos then, because I was a mess, is when Beth was killed. Why I say there were a lot of moments, I felt like a lot in season 5, we had a lot of moments that were kind of metaphors for what was going on in the season. But this one I'm going to pick because it's literally, whether you liked Beth or not, it's literally a girl who finally figured out that she's not completely worthless. Like, people were kind of treating her for a while. I don't want to say they treated her like she was worthless, that she was just weaker and didn't have a ton of strength. Even Maggie, when she got, you know, out of the prison battle, she wanted to find Glenn because she had an idea that Glenn was alive. I don't think she focused that much on Beth because she was like, well, she probably didn't make it. You know, I think, well, after their time together, Daryl was the only one who was like, no, Beth is strong. And so we're seeing someone finally find their strength and not being weak and not being a coward. Now, I will say her final actions were a little bit of overconfident. So there goes that whole fucking thing. We want her to find this confidence this whole fucking time. She finally does, and it gets her killed. Fuck. But we're seeing this girl find her strength and get shot in the head and her brains blown out in front of us by somebody who is kind of masquerading as a strong person. I think that that's just a complete fucking metaphor for the entire season. And just seeing the coward just kill the person who finally found their strength and finally kind of really like deserved her place in the world. It's tragic on the highest level. And so that's going to be my pick for the most defining moment of the season. Thank you guys so much for watching my season 5 spotlight of The Walking Dead. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.